Hare Krishna, welcome to this special program on the systematic study of the topmost revealed scripture in the world, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Before we begin today's session, I shall chant a few prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayeta Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, I would like to welcome all the viewers again for this special program on the systematic study of the essence of all the Vedic knowledge, the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam contains a total of 12 cantos, 335 chapters and 18,000 shlokas. We have already completed the study and analysis of the first 8 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and today we shall begin the study of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam contains a total of 24 chapters and 960 verses or shlokas. The main content of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the narration of the amazing history of the two most famous dynasties that ruled over the entire world, the entire universe since the bygone ages of history, which are the solar dynasty and the lunar dynasty, which are also known as the Surya Vamsha and the Chandra Vamsha. So there were many great personalities, including many great incarnations of the Supreme Lord that appeared in the Surya Vamsha and the Chandra Vamsha. So in narrating the history of the present Manvantara, which is also known as the Vaivasvata Manvantara, which is also the 7th of the 14 Manvantaras in the day of Brahma. So in the Vaivasvata Manvantara, the Manu is known as Vaivasvata Manu because he is the son of Vivasvan. And now in the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first 13 chapters of the 9th canto, very beautifully narrates the history of the Surya Vamsha, the kings and the great personalities of the solar dynasty of the Surya Vamsha, and the later 11 chapters from chapter 14 to 24 beautifully narrate the history of the Chandra Vamsha, or the great kings and personalities of the lunar dynasty, or the great personalities who descended from the moon. So now let us begin right from the first chapter of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which begins with the history of the kings and the great personalities of the Surya Vamsha, or the solar dynasty, the descendants of the sun. So Shukadev Goswami begins to narrate that originally the main person, the original person of any dynasty of either the solar dynasty, Surya Vamsha, Chandra Vamsha, or any Vamsha in the entire universe, the original source is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is Lord Vishnu, specifically in his incarnation as the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. The Supreme Lord is the father of the first living entity of this universe, and that is Lord Brahma. And then from Lord Brahma, all the various personalities then come forth. So therefore, at the beginning of creation, so this is the history of the Surya Vamsha, of the solar dynasty. At the beginning of the creation is the Supreme Lord Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and from the lotus that is generated from his navel is born the first living entity, that is Lord Brahma. And from Lord Brahma, one among the first of his 10 sons is Marichi. And Marichi later gave birth to Kashyapa. So, the son of Kashyapa is Vivaswan. Vivaswan is the presiding deity of the sun. So in this way, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu gives birth to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma gave birth to Marichi. Marichi gave birth to Kashyapa, and Kashyapa gave birth to Vivaswan, who is the presiding deity of the sun of the Surya, and thus begins the Surya Vamsha, or the descendants of the solar dynasty. Vivaswan, from his wife by name Samnya, gave birth to Shraddhadeva. Shraddhadeva was later elevated to the post of Manu, and therefore he got the name as Vaivasvata Manu. In his previous birth, Vaivasvata Manu, or Shraddhadeva, was the great devotee king by name Satyavrata, to whom the Supreme Lord appeared in his very special incarnation as the Matsya Avatara, or the fish incarnation. So the same personality has now become the Manu for the 7th Manvantara, and his name is Shraddhadeva or Vaivasvata Manu. So Vaivasvata Manu, he married Shraddha. Shraddhadeva or Vaivasvata Manu married Shraddha, and they had 10 great sons. But before the birth of these 10 sons, headed by Ikshvaku, so Ikshvaku, Nriga, Dishta, so they are the 10 principal sons of Vaivasvata Manu and Shraddha. They are mentioned in 9.1.11 and 12 as Tato Manhu Shraddhadevaha Samhyayam Asa Bharata Shraddhayam Janayamasa Dashaputran Sa Atmavan Ikshvaku Nriga Shariyati Dishta Dhrishta Karushakan Narishyantam Prishadram Cha Nabhagam Cha Kavim Vibhuhu. The 10 sons of Vaivasvata Manu and Shraddha Devi are Ikshvaku, Nriga, Shariyati, Dishta, Dhrishta, Karushaka, Narishyanta, Prishadra, Nabhaga, and the youngest son of Vaivasvata Manu is Kavi. So they are the 10 illustrated and famous sons of Vaivasvata Manu and Shraddha. And we shall find the descendants of these 10 sons very nicely delineated in the first 13 chapters of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But the first chapter of the 9th canto also explains that before Vaivasvata Manu and Shraddha begot these 10 sons, they also for a very long period of time did not have any children. And with the desire to obtain a son, Vaivasvata Manu began the performance of a very grand sacrifice. And during the performance of that sacrifice, the wife of Vaivasvata Manu, that is Shraddha, indicated to the priests that actually she desired to have a daughter and not a son. So accordingly, by the desire of Shraddha, the priests performed the ceremony in this manner. The leader of all the priests was the great sage Vasishtha, who is the Kula Guru, the spiritual master of the entire Surya Vamsha, of the entire solar dynasty. So unknown to both Vaivasvata Manu and the Guru, that is Vasishtha, the priests officiating the ceremony on the request of the wife of Vaivasvata Manu chanted the mantras by which Vaivasvata Manu later on obtained a daughter. So although Vaivasvata Manu was greatly affectionate to his daughter, yet his intention was to increase the progeny of the solar dynasty of the Surya Vamsha, and therefore he inquired from his spiritual master Vasishtha that although the sacrifice was performed with the objective of obtaining a son, how is it that a daughter had been born? So Vasishtha then prayed to the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu granted the desire of Vasishtha and Vaivasvata Manu, and in this way the daughter of Vaivasvata Manu, whose name is Ila, was again transformed into a very beautiful and handsome man, and he was transferred from a female to a male, and his name became Sudyumna. Sudyumna is actually also the link between these two great dynasties, that is the Surya Vamsha and the Chandra Vamsha. So how it happened would be explained that Sudyumna, as he grew up to be a very charming and handsome youth, once went to a very beautiful forest in Ilavrita Varsha on the slopes of the Meru Parvata, to a very beautiful garden by name Sukumara. So when Sudyumna entered the Sukumara forest, he suddenly observed that he had been transformed into a female. He again became a woman. So he was very surprised, and later he came to know that this was actually according to the statement of Lord Shiva, who is the owner, who is the master of the Sukumara Udyanavana, this forest, that it had so happened that once Lord Shiva had pronounced a statement that anyone who would enter the Sukumara forest would be transformed into a female, into a woman. And now Sudyumna had been transformed to a woman. And he again, when he went back again, the spiritual master of their dynasty, that is Vasishtha, appealed and prayed to Lord Shiva that he is the only son, and he requested Lord Shiva to again transform him back to a male, into a man. So Lord Shiva granted this desire on the condition that Sudyumna would become a man for 1 month, and a woman again, he would become a female for another month. So in this way, in alternative months, Sudyumna in 1 month would be a man, and in 1 month as Ila, he would be a woman. So this was the arrangement finally arrived at. And once the son of Chandra, of the moon god, whose name is Buddha, was attracted by the beauty of Ila, and in this way Buddha married Ila, who is also Sudyumna, for 1 month. So in this way Sudyumna was Ila for 1 month. So, in his existence as Ila, as the woman, Sudyumna married Buddha, and they had a very illustrious and glorious son by name Pururava. Pururava in this way is the link, is the progenitor of the Chandra Vamsha. So Chandra and then Buddha, and Buddha's son with Ila is Pururava. So his history would be later on described and narrated in the 14th chapter of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Meanwhile, Sudyumna as the man, he also married, and he had 3 sons by name Utkala, Gaya and Vimala. So in this way, Sudyumna cum Ila, they ruled for a long time, and thereafter King Sudyumna entrusted his kingdom to Pururava and took the Vanaprastha order of life and attained the supreme perfection of going back home, back to Godhead. He attained moksha or liberation. So further it is described about the other sons of so after Sudyumna attained, he went to Vanaprastha and attained the spiritual destination of his life. Vaivasvata Manu again practiced a lot of tapasya, and he begot 10 sons who were earlier mentioned, beginning from Ikshvaku. So all of them were highly qualified and very, very glorious and illustrious personalities. Now in the 2nd chapter of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the history of one of those 10 sons of Vaivasvata Manu by name Prishadra. So this Prishadra was very fond of protecting the cows, and therefore he was given in charge of the Goshala, of the duty of protecting the cows in the Gurukul of Vasishtha, the spiritual master. So one day it so happened that when Prishadra was protecting the cows on a very, very rainy night, a tiger came there and attacked one of the cows. It was very dark and it was raining, and Prishadra, who was the night watchman to protect the cows, immediately went and tried to attack the tiger with his upraised sword. But in that darkness and in that rainy night, he was unable to differentiate, and by mistake he actually killed the cow instead of the tiger. The tiger became confused, it then ran away, fled from that place. But the next day morning, when Vasishtha arrived, he saw that Prishadra had actually killed the cow and instead of the tiger. And Vasishtha then cursed Prishadra, the son of Vaivasvata Manu, to attain the life of a Shudra in his next birth. So now this is a very important thing to note here, that Prishadra had been cursed by Vasishtha to take his birth in the next life as a lowly person. So yet this was the destiny, this was the strong curse of Vasishtha. And normally people say that one's destiny or karma cannot be counteracted, cannot be changed under any circumstances. So although this is true in the ordinary course of existence in this material world, normally one cannot change the karma or destiny of any person. Yet there is one way, there is only one process by which any kind of karma can be completely counteracted and can be completely be destroyed, and that is by the process of pure devotional service or bhakti yoga. And we find this in the practical example of Prishadra. It is also stated in the Brahma Samhita that कर्माणि निर्दहति किन्तु च भक्तिभाजां गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि. Karmani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. Those who engage in the pure devotional service of Lord Govinda, Shri Krishna, all their karmas, all their sinful reactions are completely burnt to ashes. And here we find that Prishadra, although by his karma, by his destiny and by the curse of Vasishtha was to be born in his next life as a lowly person, yet Prishadra completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord Krishna in pure devotional service, and in the same lifetime, without having even to take the next birth, Prishadra attained spiritual perfection, attained moksha, he got liberation and went back to the spiritual world, to the eternal kingdom of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So all his karma, all his destiny, all his curse was completely changed by the divine intervention of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So this is the history of Prishadra, and then Shukadev Goswami explains the history of another of among the 10 sons of Vaivasvata Manu by name Kavi. Kavi is the youngest son of Manu, and he was right from his childhood a great pure devotee of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and in this way he did not enter household life, and he remained a Naishtika Brahmachari and attained the supreme perfection of life. From another of Manu's son named as Karusha. From Karusha, a sect of Kshatriyas known as the Karushas was generated. From another of his son, that is Drishta, another sect of Kshatriyas were generated, and one of them also had the quality of a Brahmana. So this is about one of the sons by name Drishta. From another son by name Nrigha came the sons and grandsons known as Sumati, Bhutajyoti and Vasu. So there is further description of the great king Nrigha later in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, how he had been cursed to become a giant lizard, and how he was delivered by the direct intervention of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So the deliverance of King Nrigha would be described later in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Here in the 9th canto, in the 2nd chapter, we find the descendants of King Nrigha who are from Vasu, one of the sons of Nrigha, came Pratika, and from Pratika came Oghavan, and then Narishyan. So in this way, many sons and grandsons came from the great king Nrigha Maharaj. From another of Vaivasvata Manu's sons, among his 10 sons is Narishyanta, and from Narishyanta came Chitrasena, Riksha, Midhivan, Purna, Indrasena, Vitihotra, Satyashrava, Urushrava, Devadatta and Agniveshya. And from another son by name Dishta came Nabhaga, and in his dynasty came Bhalandana, Vatsapriti, Pramshu, Pramati, Khanitra, Chakshusha, Vivimshati, Rambha, Khani Netra, Karandhama, Avikshit, Marutta, Dama, Rajyavardhana, Sudhriti, Nara, Kevala, Dhundhuman, Vegavan, Buddha and Trinabindu. And again from Trinabindu came Ilavila, from whom Kuvera took birth. Trinabindu also had another 3 sons by name Vishala, Shunyabandhu and Dhumraketu. And the son of Vishala was Hemachandra, whose son was Dhumraksha, and later came Samyama. The sons of Samyama were Devaja and Krishashva, and Krishashva's son was Somadatta, who by worshipping and surrendering to the Supreme Lord Vishnu achieved achieve the supreme perfection of going back to the spiritual world. So in this way, the history of the dynasties of the sons of Manu have been explained. Later in the 3rd chapter of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the history of another of Manu's son by name Sharyati. Sharyati had a daughter by name Sukanya, and once Sukanya and Sharyati went to the ashram of Chavana Maharshi. Chavana Maharshi was absorbed in intense penance and austerities, and a Valmika or an anthill had grown up over him, and by mistake Sukanya with a blade of grass pierced inside the anthill, and blood started oozing out because she had unintentionally she had pierced 2 eyes of the great sage Chavana Maharshi, and Chavana became greatly offended, and in order to pacify Chavana Maharshi, King Sharyati offered his daughter Sukanya in marriage to Chavana. So now Sukanya and Chavana Maharshi started living at this ashram, and Chavana was very old and invalid. In spite of that, Sukanya engaged very chastely and faithfully in the service of her great sage husband Chavana Maharshi. One day, the twin physicians of the heavenly planets, that is the Ashwini Kumaras, came, and Chavana Maharshi blessed them to be elevated to the post of Devatas, and in return asked to regain his youthful energy and youthful figure. So now, by the blessings of Ashwini Kumaras, Chavana Maharshi was transformed into a young, handsome man, and in this way, Sukanya and Chavana Maharshi they began to happily live in their ashrama. So Sharyati also had 3 sons by name Uttanabarhi, Anarta and Bhurishena. Anarta is the one who also was blessed by the Supreme Lord to have a direct portion of the spiritual world from Vaikuntha Loka to descend as the Anarta Desha, which later also came to be known as the Dwaraka Dhama, the eternal supreme abode of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Another of one of the sons of this great personality, Anarta, the middle son of Sharyati. So Vaivasvata Manu, his son is Sharyati, one of his 10 sons. Sharyati had 3 sons by name Uttana Barhi, Anarta and Bhurishena. Anarta had a son by name Revata, and Revata had 100 sons, of whom the eldest was Kakudmi, and Kakudmi had a very beautiful daughter by name Revati. Kakudmi surveyed the entire world and could not find any suitable husband for her most qualified and beautiful daughter Revati. So Kakudmi decided to go to Brahmaloka and seek the guidance and advice of Lord Brahma, that you have created all the living beings. So please suggest the suitable husband for my daughter Revati. So Kakudmi, accompanied by Revati, at the beginning of the Vaivasvata Manvantara, went to Lord to Brahmaloka, to the abode of Lord Brahma, and they observed that Lord Brahma was at that time slightly engaged. He was a little busy. He was absorbed in watching a beautiful dance performance. So King Kakudmi along with his daughter, Revati waited for a short while in Brahmaloka. And after that, Lord Brahma, as he finished watching the dance performance, turned towards Kakudmi and inquired, what brings you here? And Kakudmi explained the whole situation, that I find no one in the entire world to be a suitable bridegroom, a suitable husband for my daughter Revati. So therefore, you should give me the suggestion as to who is the proper husband for my daughter Revati. Lord Brahma smiled, because even that short duration of time in Brahmaloka, in relation to the Bhuloka, to the earthly planet, millions of years had passed. In fact, 28 cycles of Mahayugas had passed in that short duration in Brahmaloka. So Lord Brahma suggested that actually the most suitable husband for your daughter has appeared just now, immediately, without spending even a single moment more in this place in Brahmaloka. Return back to the earthly planet, to Bhuloka, and there the Supreme Lord has appeared, and who is the only suitable husband for your daughter Revati. And in this way, Kakudmi returned back and offered his daughter in marriage to the incarnation of the Supreme Lord Balarama. So in this way, Revati was married to Balarama, and Kakudmi went to Badarikashrama and attained the supreme perfection of life. So this is the history of Sharyati, one of the sons of Vaivasvata Manu. And then in the 4th chapter of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the history of Maharaj Nabhaga. Nabhaga is again one more son of Vaivasvata Manu, and from Nabhaga came his son by name Nabhaga. And the son of Nabhaga is the very, very great personality by name Ambarisha. And now we find in the 4th and 5th chapters, 4th to 6th chapters of the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the very wonderful history of the great pure devotee by name Ambarisha Maharaj. So, Ambarisha is the great grandson of Vaivasvata Manu. The great grandson of Vaivasvata Manu. Vaivasvata Manu's son is Nabhaga. Nabhaga's son is Nabhaga, and the son of Nabhaga is Ambarisha Maharaj. So Ambarisha, right from the beginning of his life, was a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and his exalted practice of pure devotional service is very, very beautifully explained in 9.4.18 to 20 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Savai Manaha Krishna Padaravindayor Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvagdane Karau Harer Mandiramangshananishu Shrutim Chakarachyuta Satkathodaye Mukundalingalaya Darshane Drishau Tadbhritya Gatraspagashenga Sangamam Granam Chatatpada Saroja Saurabhe Shrimat Tulasya Rasanam Tadarpite Padau Hare Kshetra Padanusarpane Shiro Hrishikesha Padabhivandane Kamam Chadasye Natu Kama Kamyaya Yathottama Shloka Janashraya Ratihi. Ambarish Maharaj engaged all his senses in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, Lord Shri Krishna. This is the best standard of devotional service as exhibited and practiced by the great pure devotee Ambarisha Maharaj. The very definition of bhakti is given as Hrishikena Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhaktiruchyate. The engagement of all the senses, of all the Jnanendriyas, the Karmendriyas, and the leader of the senses, which is the mind, Manaha, is to be engaged, to engage all the 11 senses in the service of the master of the senses, that is Rishikesha, or the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So how to do that is here demonstrated and exhibited by the best example of Ambarisha Maharaj. First of all, he engaged his mind at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. Savai Manaha Krishna Padaravindayoho. He engaged always his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Vachamsi, he used his words in always describing the glories of the Supreme Lord. His hands were always engaged in cleansing the Lord's temple. His ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity, the Aksha Vigraha of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and the holy places of the Supreme Lord Krishna like Mathura and Vrindavana. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the forms of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of the tulasi leaves offered to the Supreme Lord. He engaged his tongue in tasting the Mahaprasada of Lord Shri Krishna. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and to the temples of the Supreme Lord. His head in bowing down before the Lord. All his desires, Natu Kama Kamyaya, he engaged all his desires in the service of the Supreme Lord, and he never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He had zero material desires. So in this way he engaged all his senses in devotional service in various engagements in connection with the Supreme Lord. This is the best way to increase the Jivatma's attachment to the Supreme Lord and be completely free from all material desires. Once the great pure devotee King Ambarisha Maharaj came to the most sacred and the holiest place of Vrindavana, Mathura. On the banks of river Yamuna, there is even now a place known as Ambarisha Ghat. The place where Ambarisha Maharaj came and he performed the intense vow of Ekadashi Vrata. The Ekadashi Vrata is a very dear vow to please and satisfy the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and when it is executed in a holy place like Mathura or Vrindavana, it becomes even more spiritually potent. So Ambarisha Maharaj came to Vrindavana and there executed the vow of Ekadashi Vrata on the banks of the most sacred river Yamuna Nadi, and there is a principle of completely fasting on the Ekadashi Vrata. Ekadashi Vrata means basically to fast, upavasa, and completely absorb our consciousness, our mind and all the senses in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So after executing the vow of Ekadashi, the next day is known as Dvadashi, the 12th day of the fortnight. So there is a principle of breaking the Ekadashi fast in a certain particular time known as the Parana Samaya, the time of breaking the fast on Ekadashi, and that completes the Ekadashi Vrata. So once it so happened that when Ambarisha Maharaj was about to break his fast on the Dvadashi, there arrived at that place the very great and very powerful sage by name Durvasa Maharshi. Durvasa, accompanied by his many disciples, arrived at the place where Ambarisha was performing the Ekadashi Vrata. So Ambarisha Maharaj received Durvasa and his retinue with great honor and invited Durvasa and all his disciples for bhiksha to feed them first before breaking his fast. So it is the principle that before one eats, one should first feed the guest, and especially the great sages and the great priests should be honored and fed before one accepts one's food. So Durvasa accepted this invitation, this proposal of Ambarisha Maharaj, and went to the Yamuna river to take his bath and then come back for the food offered by Ambarisha Maharaj. Here Durvasa Muni and his disciples came to the banks of Yamuna and took a long time, an unduly long time, and Ambarisha Maharaj, who was waiting, was also anxious that the time of breaking the fast, the Parana Samaya, was getting over, and therefore he consulted with the Brahmanas and the priests who were there, and they suggested that he could accept a little water, and that would be equivalent of breaking the fast and also maintaining the proper etiquette of not having accepted any solid food before honoring and feeding the esteemed guests. So based on this very expertly advice of the priests, Ambarisha Maharaj accepted just a little water. Now when Durvasa Muni came back, he understood what had transpired, and he came to know that Ambarisha Maharaj had accepted a little water before feeding the guests, that is Durvasa and his disciples. So actually Durvasa had become a bit envious in his heart towards Ambarisha Maharaj, because although in the world Durvasa was known to be one of the greatest tapasvis, one of the greatest sages in the world, now because of the great devotional service of Ambarisha Maharaj, although he was neither a sage nor a renunciant, the glories of Ambarisha Maharaj had spread far and wide all across the universe, and Durvasa had become envious of this, and therefore he unnecessarily found a trivial fault which was not even a fault in Ambarisha Maharaj, and becoming very furious and angry, Durvasa Muni then created a terrible demon. He used all his siddhis and all his mystical power, his acquired powers from penances, and from his hair he created a terrible demon that ferociously came to attack Ambarisha Maharaj. But Ambarisha Maharaj, even when all these highly disturbing events were unfolding, remained completely undisturbed, with his mind completely fixed upon the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Ambarisha Maharaj was least disturbed and agitated. He took no counteracting measures even to try to escape or try to prevent the attack of this ferocious demon. So this is the nature of a completely surrendered devotee like Ambarisha Maharaj. He did not even appeal or pray to the Supreme Lord to come and protect him. He just surrendered to the Supreme Lord that whatever may be your sweet will, let it happen so. So the Supreme Lord could not tolerate this great offense to the lotus feet of his pure devotee Ambarisha, and immediately sent his personal weapon, that is Sudarshana. The Sudarshana chakra came and immediately counteracted the Rakshasa, and very easily the Sudarshana chakra killed this terrible being which was generated from the anger of Durvasa Muni. Now, after killing this terrible being, the Sudarshana chakra further then began to approach Durvasa Muni himself. Now, Durvasa, although the greatest sage, he became very fearful of Sudarshana chakra and began to start running and fleeing in escape from the attack of Sudarshana. So this is the difference between a great tapasvi sage and a great pure devotee, a surrendered devotee of the Supreme Lord. When the terrible Rakshasa was attacking Ambarisha, he did not move even a single step. He was completely surrendered to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Whereas Durvasa Muni, when he was attacked, because he had everything spiritual but lacking the most important spiritual qualification of a devotional service, he was devoid of bhakti to the Supreme Lord, and therefore everything was incomplete. Whereas for Ambarisha Maharaj, although he did not have any other siddhis, any other spiritual qualifications, just the one most important quality of bhakti, he was complete in all aspects. So that is the glory of Shuddha Bhakti or pure devotional service. So Durvasa Muni not only escaped and fled from the scene, he in fact traveled to nook and corner, to every nook and corner of the universe, trying to escape, trying to seek protection from the oncoming Sudarshana chakra. Durvasa went to Swargaloka and appealed to the king of Swarga, that is Indra, to please protect him from the attack of the Sudarshana chakra. But as soon as Indra heard that Sudarshana chakra is there, he backed out. He said, no, I cannot help you, I cannot do anything for you. So then Durvasa ran to Mahagloka, Janaloka, Tapoloka. Finally he went to Brahmaloka and appealed to Lord Brahma to protect him. But even Lord Brahma declined to protect him from the wrath of from the attack of Sudarshana chakra. So finally even Durvasa, not finding protection anywhere, went to Kailasa. He went and appealed to Lord Shiva and prayed to him to protect him. But even Lord Shiva declined, said that I am unable to protect you from Sudarshana chakra. Then ultimately Durvasa went to Shvetadvipa, the local planet of the Supreme Lord in this material world. He went to Lord Vishnu himself and then appealed. He fell at the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu and appealed and prayed to Lord Vishnu to please protect him from the heat, from the blazing heat of his weapon Sudarshana chakra. But even Lord Vishnu declined to protect him, and he said that even I cannot protect you from Sudarshana chakra. There is only one person who can protect you, and that is none other than Ambarisha Maharaj. You have committed such a grievous offense at the lotus feet of my devotee. My devotees, the Supreme Lord has declared in 9.4.68 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Supreme Lord Vishnu says that my devotees are my heart. So this is the most intimate relationship between the Supreme Lord and his pure devotees. This is the statement by Lord Vishnu that Sadhavo hridayam mahyam sadhunam hridayam tvaham madanyatena jananti naham tebhyo managapi. That my pure devotees are my heart, and I always reside in the heart of my pure devotees. So, my pure devotees do not know anything but me, and likewise, I don't know anything but my pure devotees. So, who are you? You seem to be some outsider. So, therefore, only by pure devotional service, by becoming a devotee of the Supreme Lord, can we enter into the inner circle of the ultimate aspect of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So, in this way, finally, Lord Vishnu says that Upayam kathayishyami tava vipra shrunushvatat ayam hi atma bhicharaste yatastam yahi machiram sadhushu prahitam tejaha prahartuhu kurute shivam. The only upayam, the only solution is to approach Ambarisha Maharaj and beg pardon, beg forgiveness from Ambarisha Maharaj. Kshamapaya mahabhagam tatashantir bhavishyati. Lord Vishnu says that you should therefore go immediately to Ambarisha Maharaj and beg kshamapaya, beg forgiveness from Ambarisha Maharaj. So in this way, Durvasa now returned back to Vrindavana, to Mathura, and fell at the lotus feet of Ambarisha Maharaj. Even now he was still being chased by the blazing heat of Sudarshana Chakra, and now Durvasa Muni came back and fell and caught hold of the lotus feet of Ambarisha Maharaj and begged forgiveness and pardon from Ambarisha. And at that time, Ambarisha offered many wonderful prayers to Sudarshana Chakra, asking and praying to Sudarshana Chakra to spare the life of Durvasa. One of the prayers which is recorded in 9.5.3 is Ambarisha uvacha tvam agnir bhagavan suryaha tvam somo jyotisham patihi tvam apastvam kshitir vyoma vayur matrendriyani cha. O Sudarshana Chakra, you are fire, you are sun, you are the moon, the master of all luminaries. So in this way, Sudarshana is the original effulgence in the entire material worlds and the spiritual worlds, and is the original weapon of the Supreme Lord. One more prayer offered by one of the prayers offered by Ambarisha is Sudarshana namastubhyam sahasragachyuta priya sarvastra ghatin vipraya swasti bhuya idaspate. O most favorite of Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sahasrara, you have thousands of spokes, and O destroyer of all weapons, original vision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Kindly give shelter and be auspicious upon this sage Durvasa. So now, when Ambarisha Maharaj requested and prayed to Sudarshana Chakra to forgive and to leave and to spare the life of Durvasa Muni, Sudarshana Chakra stopped its blazing fire upon Durvasa and returned back to the spiritual world, to the abode of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. And in this way, Durvasa was pardoned and forgiven by Ambarisha Maharaj. So Ambarisha Maharaj is in this way one of the greatest pure devotees of the Supreme Lord, who engaged all his senses in the pure devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Ambarisha then served Durvasa Muni sumptuous food to eat, and after that the king Ambarisha himself was such a self-controlled great personality that for the entire duration of 1 year, it took 1 year for Durvasa Muni to escape from the heat, from the attack of Sudarshana Chakra. Meanwhile, here Ambarisha, for the entire duration of 1 year, stood at the same place without eating anything. Now he also, after feeding Durvasa Muni, he also took the Mahaprasada, the food offered to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. And later Maharaj Ambarisha, after ruling for a very long time, he took the path of complete renunciation, and he went to the banks of the Manasa Sarovara, which is close to the Kailasa Parvata. So he came to the banks of Manasa Sarovara and executed devotional austerities and devotional penances, and he attained the ultimate perfection of life, of going back to the spiritual world, to Vaikuntha Loka. So we shall continue the history of the many great personalities of the Surya Vamsha who are being described here in these chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you have any questions or queries about today's subject matter, you are most welcome to post it on the WhatsApp group or in the comments box. Please do like the video, share it, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please do join us for the continuation of the study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.